"Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." Now you might be asking, why the hell did I just quote to you Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address? Well, folks, it's American history and you probably should know it. Just kidding. It actually segues into what we're talking about today. Our Fair Housing Act, or the Fair Housing Act Title VIII of 1968, an amendment of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Now, Abraham Lincoln, being a politician or just a very smart wartime president, created the Emancipation Proclamation. About, I would say, 10 months before his Gettysburg Address, he mandated that. Well, first off, he was getting his butt kicked by the Confederates, and he was afraid of losing the Union. So much, in fact, he put everything in priority of saving the Union, and because of which came up with a plan. He knew that African Americans at the time represented about 3.5 to 4 million people. And in his mind, these were soldiers that can help further his political agenda. So he said, "Hey, African Americans, if you escape your owners who have enslaved you, cross over to Union lines, I will therefore make you forever free." And that was the basis, in so many words, of the Emancipation Proclamation, the freeing of the slaves, which has been overshadowed by the Civil War, free slavery. It really just bottomed down to Abraham Lincoln looking at a strategy of winning the war. But from that moment, created the Civil Rights Act. A few years later, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 prohibited discrimination in a lot of different areas. So it declared all persons born within the United States citizens without distinction of race, color, everything that we're talking about today. Fair Housing Act. So it was amended in 1866, was amended to 1964, then amended to 1968. But it prohibited the discrimination of the sale and lease of residential property, including vacant land, on the basis of sex, color, national origin, race, religion, familial status, and handicap disabilities. Now, just like a COA, everything stays the same there. Score, sex, color, national origin, race, and religion. ECOA had marital status, age, and the receipt of public assistance. Well, FH is how you remember the addition to the Fair Housing Act, which included if you were pregnant with a child, familial status, you could not be discriminated against, or handicap disabilities such as your legs were blown off and you want to buy a condo on the 4th floor, no one can say, well, how are you going to get up there? It's nobody's business. They can't discriminate based on your handicap or disability such as HIV, AIDS. So you are protected. You cannot be denied credit. More so, no one can refuse you credit based on a bona fide application, an application made in good faith. So you cannot be refused the sale or lease of property on any of these bases. So 1968 expanded the Civil Rights Act of 1966 to prohibit the discrimination concerning the sale, rental, or financing of housing based on race, religion, national origins, and only until 1974 did they talk about sex. So it's pretty interesting that the Emancipation Proclamation set the stage for the Fair Housing Act, which led into the prohibited discrimination of the sale and lease of residential property or housing. So it's expanded in advertising. You cannot change the term of advertising to benefit a certain demographic, a certain ethnicity, It can't be focused in such a way. And you also need to have the equal housing lender slogan saying, hey, we occupy practices that is equal. We occupy, we operate in practices in such a way that does not prohibit a certain sex, color, national origin, race, or religion. So there is a couple of exemptions. Now, if I was renting out, let's say, this room in my own house, I can be as racist as I want to be. You know, I can wear my little pointy hat or my gold teeth and say, you know what? I only want to rent to people that identify with the color purple. Doesn't matter, it's my house. Or if you're selling a house without a broker, you're not bound by, you're not going on the NMLS. So you don't have these disclosures. You're not bound by the Fair Housing Act. And also you can be selective in the organizations that you lease to in a certain neighborhood, such as right next door to me is the 55 plus community, Sun City Anthem. Or you can say, you know what, we don't want to rent, sale, or lease to people of sororities or fraternities because it's going to bother the community or certain clubs and organizations. So under the Fair Housing Act, a written complaint could be filed with HUD, the Housing Urban Development, for up to 1 year. So what else does Fair Housing Act do? We talked about what's needed on all advertising. That's the equal housing lender slogan or logo appeared on all advertising. We talked about how advertising can't be discriminatory in nature, but Fair Housing Act also prevents in certain things. And let's talk about what happens with a realtor or a real estate agent. Those things that the Fair Housing Act protects against is such as things like blockbusting or steering. Now, blockbusting, also known as panic selling, happens when you have a realtor comes to you in your house and say, hey, a certain sex, color, national origin, race, religion is about to move into your neighborhood and it's going to drop the value of your current home and you might lose out on all the equity you currently have. You might want to sell immediately. You can't do that. That's illegal. That's called blockbusting or panic selling. Also, steering is when a realtor gets a customer and says, you know what? You identify with the people of Jupiter. I think you're kind of more towards the southwest. You might want to stay there. That's steering. You can't do that. That's illegal. You can't force somebody to be in a certain area that's similar to their color, race, national origin, or language they speak. It is of no consequence to you, and it's none of your damn business on where they go. They can go wherever the hell they want to go. It's a free country. Thanks towards the history of America and the Civil Rights Act and winning the Civil War and all the other things that happen that creates an element of freedom. So lenders are the only one that happen to control this aspect, which is redlining. So as they describe it, picture a map. And they draw a big red circle with an X in front of big red circle with a line saying, do not lease or do loans in this neighborhood because it's typically not beneficial to your pockets. Redlining is basically when lenders limit the financial service to specific neighborhoods, or reverse redlining when lenders only want to operate in affluent or specific neighborhoods that they feel comfortable with. Like, I only want to do loans in Beverly Hills because I want to hang out with rock stars and movie stars and athletes and the affluent people of the state, and I don't want to deal with the low income people. In fact, to combat this, HMDA, an amendment of the Fair Housing Act, or in addition, the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act requires people to actually fill out a form, such as the LAR, and report it to the Loan Application Registry. This is Section 8 of the 1003 IRLA, the Uniform Residential Loan Application. So it is required based on HMDA to either visibly observe somebody's discriminating factors if they don't want to tell it to you, or either by surname, you have to report it, you have to document it, and then you report that to the LAR, which was due on March 1st, every year annually, and this is regulated to prevent the actual discrimination based on ethnicity, race, and there's a third one, sex. Okay, and then also HMDA is the meet the housing needs of the neighborhood. Now, the other amendment is the Community Reinvestment Act. Now, this is to meet the credit needs of a neighborhood. Now, CRA, credit, HMDA, H, housing needs. The credit needs is saying, are we properly meeting our loan programs for low-income neighborhoods, which is typically people with low credit or less than perfect credit. So that combats those two. So that's pretty much it, or a quick overview of what Fair Housing Act actually covers. Any questions or anything I missed, please let me know. I'm definitely not the professional. I'm not perfect. This is just my study method, and I wanted to share it with you, so maybe it can help you. But it definitely helps to teach something because you retain 80% of what you teach and only about 20% of what you read or learn. So this is my method sharing with you. Thank you so much and good luck on your test.